So when we talk about gangster movies, we always talk about the rise, the climb, the intoxicating momentum of someone going from nothing to everything. But The Irishman removes that entire section. It denies you the glamour, and in doing so, it shows you the rotten core that these other films really only hint at. There are so many scenes in The Irishman that stay with you long after the film ends, and it's not the violent scenes or the big meetings or crazy set pieces. It's our characters sat there in silence, staring and just waiting and realising that time has run away from them. If you love exploring the crime, morality and humanity behind cinema's most powerful films, please consider subscribing to the channel, and just as a heads up, this video contains spoilers if you haven't seen the film. The Irishman follows Frank Sheeran, a World War II veteran turned hitman, as he reflects on his life in organised crime. He works for mob boss Russell Bufalino, played by Joe Pesci, and becomes friends with union leader Jimmy Hoffa. The interesting thing about Frank is he never actually rises up slowly. He almost accidentally gets carried along by orders and by obedience, by his numb willingness to do what other men can't. Frank isn't charming, and he's not ambitious, and he's not even particularly intelligent. He's just available. He's just had the wartime experiences, which mean he'll take orders, and that's enough to make him useful to very dangerous people. De Niro's performance is so internal, it almost feels like a negative space, like the absence of a soul. And I'll be honest, it's the hardest De Niro performance I've ever had to sit through. I still think it's fantastic, but in a lot of his roles you'll find the glimmers of humanity. But De Niro's had to literally cut off that element of the performance, and it is fascinating to watch. A new kind of performance for him. Even at this age, he was still experimenting with where he could go with characters. Him and Scorsese were going even deeper. Frank is a man who doesn't question things. Maybe not even because he's necessarily cruel, but because questioning for him leads to feeling. Feelings lead to doubt, and doubt can get him killed. Joe Pesci's performance as Russell is also fascinating. Gone is the explosive, unpredictable gangster of Goodfellas or Casino. In his place is a man who is calm, terrifying and still, but he commands the room. Every gesture, every slight shift of the eyes or tilt of the head or facial expression just conveys this chilling knowledge that he's fully capable of destroying anyone at any time.
He has no choice. He has no choice. These are the higher-ups.
Well, he's a higher up too. I mean, no.
Not like this, you know.
It's just in those little moments where he's giving Frank his orders, just so casually. You know, when he tells Frank that Jimmy Hoffa has to go, the full horror of the character emerges. He's just methodical, rational, almost polite in his delivery, and yet the immorality behind every word is just undeniable. Everyone changed how they approached performances in this. Like I said, De Niro is very different, but Pesci completely and utterly took a different approach. He showed that a gangster that he was playing didn't need to scream or rage to terrify, it didn't need to do crazy things, but the quiet ones are often the most dangerous.
Frankie, we did all we could for the man.
And this is where Martin Scorsese's directing shines. He turns the camera not toward the violence as a spectacle, but towards the obedience and the casualness of it all as a real tragedy. Power in this film isn't something you achieve, it seems to be something you surrender to, like you're being pulled down into a hole you never meant to fall into. What's shocking about the violence in The Irishman is how utterly uncinematic it is. See, I said it's shocking, but it's not really shocking, because Scorsese desires to make the violence not shocking, unlike anything he'd done before. There are no wide shots, no dramatic moments, no adrenaline. It's just these quick, clumsy, almost awkward moments of killing. A gun raised, a shot fired, a body falling, and then Frank just shuffles away. It's like someone just doing a chore. Like doing the everyday maintenance, taking out the rubbish. Frank doesn't take pleasure in it, but he also doesn't feel any guilt. He feels nothing. And I'm fascinated with how Scorsese manages to make you not feel nothing for people getting shot, but just to see that the presentation is, there is nothing to this. It's just casual, it just is what it is. Frank has switched off the part of his brain that should care. And maybe he did that to survive, or maybe it was always missing. We're never told. Throughout the film, Frank tosses countless guns into the harbour, and that reinforces the desensitisation of this life. Every time we see him throwing yet another gun into the harbour, you just start to feel like Frank is throwing even more of his humanity away every time. You just throw. Humanity's just going rapidly for this man. This film is very different to Goodfellas and Casino. There is a cold, almost nihilistic atmosphere. There is not a party feeling like Goodfellas and Casino. We don't witness the spectacle of crime. We witness the slow process of living with it, and the emptiness that comes with survival at any cost. It's almost like Scorsese said, right, you lot think I glamorise this life? I'll show you I don't. And he made probably the coldest depiction of crime in his whole career. One of the most devastating moments that just shows this cold atmosphere takes place when Frank makes a call to one of his victims' wives. De Niro's performance is staggering. He has to feign sympathy and kindness because she doesn't know that he killed her husband, and Frank just stumbles through the conversation, finally confronted with the guilt that he just buries. He's a man whose life has just been compliance, and then he gets confronted with the sheer pain that he's caused. He doesn't know what to do. It's a really awkward, horrible, dark scene, and Scorsese forces us to go through it. We sit through the entire call and it's just heartbreaking.
No. I mean, you know, maybe he did something like the Joe Bananas thing where he, you know, had himself kidnapped and then came back, but he wasn't hurt, nothing happened. Maybe he just felt, you know, he wanted to clear his head a bit, but you gotta just think that it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay. He's gonna be. If you need anything, I'm here for you.
There is something iconic about watching De Niro, Pacino and Pesci in this film. They are the faces of crime cinema, men who built their reputations on this stuff. Decades later they return to it, almost as ghosts of that era, now wanting to show the weight of the films they made in the past and what it leaves behind. And we also need to talk about Al Pacino, of course, as Jimmy Hoffa. It's a really compelling performance. At first glance, it might seem like Pacino just doing Pacino, because the gestures, the intensity, and the charisma are all there. You know, and that's not a bad thing. Al Pacino is one of the greatest of all time, and I love seeing Pacino be Pacino.
I'm going to jail. You understand? I'm going to prison. Because of you. You dumb motherfuckers.
But when you closely look at his performance, he does become Jimmy Hoffa. What I notice most is that he embodies the stubbornness of the character, his single-mindedness and his unwavering pride. He really captures that infuriating nature of Jimmy Hoffa, because he's just so frustrating to talk to. Constantly being warned, but constantly just not accepting anything, and always wanting to go off on his own flights of fancy and bring up answers to questions you never expect. But he's charming in other moments, and he's kind, and he's probably the most human character in the film, because everyone else is truly horrible, and despite Hoffa's brushes with crime, he's probably the best person in the film, despite his flaws.
Listen to me. At the end, there's only one thing that's real. This is my union. This is my union, Frank. Very simple when you say it that way.
What makes The Irishman feel so brutal is what it refuses to offer. You are sat there waiting for some kind of release from Scorsese. Like, all his other films have that. Like, despite how dark they are, there's slight moments where the characters are either going to be okay, or they've learned something, or they feel something. They might not fully regret things, but they feel something. There is no redemption in The Irishman. By the time Frank reaches old age, the empire that he built with Russell is a ghost, and yet Frank continues to try and navigate this world with the same mechanical efficiency that he always did. The crimes he committed, the lives he destroyed, they leave a mark, but he only feels it in fragments. De Niro's portrayal of Frank is relentless. He isn't an anti-hero like Henry Hill or other gangsters that we know. He doesn't look for justice. He just exists. Watching him attempt introspection, particularly in the moments leading up to the conversations with his daughter and the priest that he meets, he struggles to connect with them, to feel what most of us would consider basic human remorse. The fumbling words, the shuffling, the hesitant stares. Like, De Niro is really good at the physicality of this performance, of showing Frank is just at war with himself, but he doesn't even understand really what he's fighting because he never had it. Time is perhaps the real force that consumes everything in this film, because it strips away the legends, the stories, the reputation. It renders all of what they did meaningless essentially. It turns their power into emptiness. The Irishman feels like Scorsese's final statement on the world he spent his entire career exploring. I love how he goes there in this film. He chooses to make it completely different to Goodfellas, Casino, to all of the crime films he's done. This is the one where he goes furthest, and the length of the film really doesn't put me off. I actually feel like it's got a great rhythm to it. It's full of Scorsese's classic montages where we see events pass and you really feel the passage of time and how long this was, and you feel the characters settling into their routine, and you feel the stress and tension around every corner when any small thing goes wrong because it threatens their entire empire. And when Jimmy Hoffa becomes involved in the situation, he just adds a certain dismantling of that world, forces Frank to realise that he's been killing all these people meaninglessly for his whole life, and now he's sitting in front of Russell, who is saying you need to take that same emotionless approach to your best friend.
Frank, I had to put you into this thing, or you would never let it happen. And I know you wouldn't. But it's gonna happen. Either way, he's going.
The crazy thing about this world is being someone's best friend also means that you're going to be their doom, because if someone else is going to kill him, you're going to stop it. If it's going to happen, it's going to be you. And that just shows the toxic, crazy world that these men create and the alternate wavelength that they're living life on. But this film really isn't a story about violence and chaos. It's a story about outliving the people who made you commit that violence and chaos. This is probably Martin Scorsese's closest film to the masterpiece I talked about recently, Once Upon a Time in America. This is his take on memory, morality, and inevitability. I don't know if Scorsese could ever go back to gangster films after The Irishman. Like, I know he's still thriving with Killers of the Flower Moon, but I don't know if he could ever confront it again. It really does feel like a final statement, and it would take something very interesting, a different take, for him to go back to it. I feel like this just feels like putting a cap on that amazing, classic, unbelievable era of gangster cinema that Martin Scorsese gave us, but in a sad and emotional way that reminds us Martin Scorsese was never glamorized in this stuff, and it does always end up in the end where it does in The Irishman. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this deep dive, please subscribe for more videos just like this. And if you've seen the film, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Which moments stayed with you the longest? What do you think of the performances? All of the stuff that makes up The Irishman. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.